pleasant evening to one and all present here. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this captivating session titled The Allure of Romance Novels. Today, we delve into two deeply moving and thought-provoking narratives that explore the intersection of love, friendship, and the complexities of human emotions. We are joined by two incredibly talented speakers who have beautifully captured the essence of love in their works. Anuradha Kumar Jain ji in conversation with our moderator Rolii Agrawal ji. I would request you to please come up on the stage. Can we welcome them with a huge round of applause? Anuradha Kumar Jain ji brings us Written on the Wind, set in pre-partition Lahore. This narrative takes us through a period in history and focuses on two women, Harjeet from a prominent landlord family and Amia, the child of a British officer, and a Brahmin woman. Both women challenge societal norms in their own ways. The novel intricately weaves desire, love, and politics, offering a powerful story on the struggles of the nation and personal sacrifices that women make in a changing world. We have with us Anuradha Kumar Jain ji, who is a writer of rare sensitivity and flair. Her lifelong love for the natural world motivated her to get a PhD in geography and her work in this nature journal. Her first work, Written on the Wind, was published to immense critical acclaim, the novel being made into an OTT series. While she has the fortune of calling to call three places her home, New Delhi, Chandigarh and Fagu, that is near Shimla, she is currently based in New Delhi. Other spinning tales, her interests include embroidery and cloud spotting. And of course, we have with us our moderator, Rolii Agrawal ji, who will guide us through this fascinating conversation with her thoughtful questions and insights. She has around 18 years of teaching experience with graduate and postgraduate students. She completed her graduation from St. Stephen's College and has taught literature language to college students and immigrants in London. Her doctoral thesis centered around existential analysis, and she did her University of Cambridge teacher training course from UK. Her research interests include gender issues, literary adaptations, and she has presented papers in reputed national and international conferences. A thorough literature enthusiast, she loves reading fiction, non-fiction, and poetry in both Hindi and English languages. And now, without any further ado, let us embark on this journey through the realms of love, friendship, and of ambition with our two amazing speakers that we have here. Can we start the session with a huge round of applause?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our session today. As rightly expressed by our compere here very sweetly, the allure of romance novels. I'm going to be in conversation with Anuradha Kumar Jain about her book, Written on the Wind. Before we start our discussion and our conversation with her, I would like to request you, ma'am, to please tell us something about the novel.
This novel is based in Lahore at the time of pre-partition, from the turn of the century to 1947, and it explores the story of two women, both strong and both willing to push the boundaries of what is acceptable, but in their own ways. So one of the protagonists, Harjeet, belongs to a very well-known landlord family in Punjab, and then she's married to an equally well-known lawyer in Lahore. And she has two children, and the family she's married into is very progressive and far-sighted. But she is dissatisfied with her life because her parents died early, and she was brought up basically in a hostel in Lahore where there were more British girls than Indian. So that shaped her way of thinking, and she finds her husband, who is 10 years elder to her, very timid and too, submissive in front of his mother. So by and large, she is dissatisfied with her life. And then at a friend's house, her best friend from school also lives in Lahore. So at her friend's house, I must add, she has 2 children. And when the story starts in 1929, the daughter is 4 years old and the son is 2. So she, through her best friend then, she meets a Muslim man. He is teaching maths at a college in Lahore, and he seems to her to be totally opposite of her husband. He is free-spirited, he is fun-loving to some extent, and he seems to be very empathetic towards her. So she starts having an affair with him, and she knows it is wrong, and she is not able to put an end to this relationship because he fulfills a deep emotional need in her, and the relationship continues. And the other woman is born out of wedlock to a British Army officer and a Brahmin girl. And her mother dies a few days after she's born. So the child is brought up by her grandfather and later by her mother's cousin sister. So she also feels emotionally very aloof from everybody. She is also lonely. But at 19, she is married to a man who is a clerk at the postal office, which was a big deal in that time. He had a sarkari naukri. But the marriage is never consummated because after 2 days after marriage, he tells her that he is in love with a widow from the Banya caste, and whom he has married secretly, and he's living with her. Now, this totally shatters Amya because after the initial shock wears off, she decides that she must start working. She's finished her schooling because she has nobody to fall back upon, and she has no siblings, she has no parents, and she can hardly go back to her Mausi. So she is fluent in English and Urdu and Punjabi. So she takes up work in a children's magazine, which has just been commissioned. And she's good at her work, she's punctual, her command of the languages is good, and in the course of writing, she does fairly well with herself. And then after about 6-7 years, she's living in her in-laws' house with the husband, who's largely absent, but after a few years, he comes back. And rather than questioning him, she just thanks fate for giving her another chance at happiness. So they fall into the routine of a normal couple. But a few days later, her husband's mistress comes home and says that the husband had come home only because the father had threatened to cut him off from his property. So that leaves her shattered, and then she decides that she's going to leave her in-laws' house. The husband is never going to come back. He walks off with that woman. So what is she going to do there? So with the help of the lady whose magazine she edits for, she finds she takes a room on rent in a house of a Parsi couple. But as soon as she shifts to that house, she realizes she's pregnant, and then in a panic she goes back to her husband's house, but she finds that everybody has left because her husband had anyway left, and so has the father. But then in a strange twist, the Parsi couple suggests to her that she give up her child for adoption to their older son, who had been married for many years but could not have a child. So after much deliberation, she decides on that. And then the story explores her relationship with this Parsi couple, and especially the lady Khurshid, and how fulfilling it is for her. And then through her writing, she meets Gautam, who is Harjeet's husband. And they become very good friends. They do not cross the line of propriety, but they become very close. And then the story from there explores the troubled times they were living in and how it shapes their experiences. And then it follows from there. Is that enough of the story?
Thank you so much, ma'am. I need help with the mic.
No, take this.
Since this is a story of two women, and we basically see all the men in the novel through the point of view of these women, and they are the leading ladies, how much do you think love is different for men and for women?
That's an interesting question, Rolii. And I do think that the women get more emotionally involved. And the man always has his job or his outside world to look to. And in the period in which the book is written especially, the women get more emotionally involved and they sense and feel things more sensitively than the man does, because at the end of the day, he has his job or his career is equally important to him. So I think from a woman's point of view, you get a deeper and more sensitive understanding and love differently.
Personally for me, and also interestingly, you know, the entire story is set in the city of Lahore. Now that was very, very fascinating when I looked at it because I am not familiar with Lahore. Why did you choose Lahore as the setting of your novel? And not just Lahore, why do you situate your narrative in a pre-independent India which is full of turmoil and tensions just rising every day?
Both my parents from both sides were refugees from Pakistan at the time of independence, and we grew up hearing these stories of the homeland they had left behind and the turmoil. And some of the stories were so interesting of their life in Lahore, and after that also of the, you know, the heartbreak which led to the partition, that I felt that this was a story which needed to be told. And especially since my mother's side, they were very progressive and open-minded, and it was so different from what we had thought. You know, pre-partition India would be like, you know, the very patriarchal society and very closed. This was a totally, you know, different life they led there. And then basically I wanted to tell their story because, you know, like in the rest of India at the time, people say that we got independence and there was much joy and, you know, independent India. But whoever I met from my family and all, they never used the word independence. They always said partition ho gayi, because they left behind their homeland, which they, you know, which I think hurt them for a very long time. Like my father was in college or in school when they shifted. But all his life in Chandigarh, he still got himself an Urdu newspaper, which he read till, you know, till the end. So I thought that this needed to be told. That's why it's based in Lahore.
Particularly when, you know, when we come to Amia's portion where she's packing up and they are moving to Mumbai, she's very incredulous along with Khurshid that, you know, they don't really want to pack their bags and go. They'll never come back to Lahore.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, definitely that idea does come out there. In addition to that, you know, the book also felt like a masterclass in history. There were a lot of references, you know, to the political landscape of that time, like the death of Lala Lajpat Rai, the civil disobedience movement, the call for Quit India movement. Why do you situate the lives of your characters in that political landscape? Why is there so much of referencing to what's happening in the nation at that time, and how do you think that affects the evolution of your characters in the book?
You know, I feel that you can never separate a story or in a way pluck it out from the socio-political times it is living in. Like if I was to write a story today, I think that cell phones and internet would be a very major part of it.
Yes.
So you have to put a story in its context. That is what roots it and gives it its, bearings. And especially for this story, since Gautam, one of the main protagonists, is a nationalist, and so is his father, and they provide legal help to the revolutionaries, and then he later also motivates Amia to write about the turmoil which was happening. So you could not separate it from that, because actually in Lahore that time, the newspapers and the books and the stories and everyday life was deeply affected by this, what was happening, which led to, it was a unusual occurrence. Like if you was to base a story on a peacetime city, then maybe you don't need to bring in so much of the history. But when what is happening is affecting your life daily, everybody had to, shift this side and that side of the border. So it had to be grounded in that. That's the reason.
In fact, I'd like to share this with the audience here, that reading about partition from history books is very different, and reading it as part of fiction where it's very neatly interwoven, you actually get to see the side of the common people and how their life was at that time. So do you think, Anuradha ji, that it's the moral responsibility of a writer as a public intellectual to ensure that their stories and the literature that they produce is reflective of the society?
I think not necessarily. You can write about the present day society. In fact, I think it would be much easier for me to do that. It would involve much lesser research, because if you write something which is based on history, then you have to be sure of your facts. You can't write something which is not true. So, but I feel it is also maybe our duty to write about the time which has passed, and a time in which, what you read about the partition is from these textbooks and all, and some of them I feel tend to be swayed this way or that way, to tell of a society in which people live naturally like neighbors and friends, and there was no, within the society, there was no great, division. So I think it is also, like when in 1982 in Punjab, there were these Sikh riots and Bhindranwale and all. So like my mother's family is from Sardars and father is Hindu. So we have friends both sides. And most of my friends were Sardars. And common people all rued it. I mean, nobody was happy with what was happening. The common man till the very end, unless, there are too many atrocities and hatred spreads a lot, they were living together happily. So I think I wanted to bring this out, that there was no such hatred in the society at that time. That came much later.
Right. And it comes out beautifully through the way Harjeet and Amya navigate their relationships. But for both these women, love is a constant struggle. It doesn't come easy to them. Their journey to get love, to look for it, it's full of turmoil and struggles. How do you think this shapes their core personalities and their take on life?
I think that if you want to, the path to love is not necessarily always an easy one. If Harjeet had decided to take the easy path and live with the husband she was living with, even if she was dissatisfied, life would have been different. But if you choose to go the extra mile, or you choose to be different, or to want to redefine your boundaries, then it's always difficult, because society doesn't easily allow you to stretch the limits of acceptability. So, but in their case, I think Harjeet, because her parents died young and she lived with her brother and the bhabhi, and they put her into a hostel, much as the brother loved her. I think that innate loneliness shaped her personality, as did Amya's. And then later, being dissatisfied, not finding love, that added to it. But the core personality was also shaped by these events of their childhood, I think.
Right. Talking of Harjeet and Amya, how similar or different do you think are they?
I think their life circumstances may be similar, but who they become is different. Like they both lose their parents early, they both grow up very lonely, both look for love all their lives. But there the similarity I think ends. Harjeet goes the extra mile and has an extramarital affair. And while Amya is deeply attracted to Gautam, and he is so much in love with her, she never crosses that line and gets into a relationship with a married man. So basically it is, though circumstances may have been same, but who they become and how they behave is different. They are different women.
Right, right. Because we are talking about love and what love does to one's life and how we receive it, there are many versions of love that we understand in our journeys. And Amya is a very good example of that. She has the Parsi couple, Adele and Khurshid, who become, very close to her, and their relationship acquires a completely new dimension. There is Ram Swaroop, who supports Amya through her troubled times and actually is instrumental in helping her get a job when she wants to be financially independent. He also, towards the end of the story, ensures that Amya gets the letter of her father that Kamla had inadvertently saved. Gautam's friendship shows Amya a Lahore that she's never been aware of up till that point in time. Do you think these versions of love actually compensate for Amya the void that a failed marriage creates in her life?
Yeah, I like to think they do. I like to think they do because love is of many kinds and has many facets, Yes, a love of a spouse or a beloved is different, but Khurshid, and Khurshid especially, is so accepting and so loving of her, and then Gautam cares so much for her and Khurshid's children, and she gets to see her son growing up. And I think these versions of love, to a large extent, compensate for all of us, I think. The love of our children, the love of our friends, it does fill particular needs in our life, So I think it does compensate. That's what I like to feel. I like to feel that it did make her feel more fulfilled.
Yeah. And to add to what ma'am said, I think another thing that makes Amya the character that she is, that she has the courage to get up and take action.
Yeah.
She is, even though she has a failed marriage and she knows that the husband's not coming back, she's courageous enough to make a choice, to get up and go and look for other options and act on those and kind of build a life for herself.
Yeah.
Did your writer element somehow get portrayed into the way Amya turns out to be a writer in the novel?
Interesting. Haven't thought of that. Yeah, but I felt when I was writing the book, I wanted Amya to be basically a dancer, okay? But then I really believe, which I used to read and never believed, that the character write itself, she wrote who she wanted to be in a way, if you can understand what I'm saying. So she ended up as a writer, because things fell into place and there was no where I could fit in the dance thing of what she was going to do. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Before I move on, I would really like you to read out some excerpts from the book for our audience here, something which is very close to your heart. This is a beautifully written book. The sentences are almost like this delectable dish in your mouth, which is absolutely gorgeous to eat. So I would really request you to read out some excerpts for all of us here.
So the title of the book is Written on the Wind. So I will first read out a paragraph which explains why I chose that title for the book. So to put it in context, this is that Harjeet then, because of Haidar's encouragement, and joins a joins a club where they do these plays to raise money for charity. And she turns out to be very good at it, and she enjoys playing the parts of different women to fill the void in her own life for those women. And why is it, titled Written on the Wind? So this particular thing is set in Simla, where there's a Gaiety Theatre to this very day, where there are lots of plays, and it's a very nice dramatic place. There was a row of trees along the bridle path outside their cottage, and when the sun rose in the morning, it traversed up the slope slowly, illuminating them one by one. The chosen tree, lit up from behind, turned into molten gold, standing out from the rest, enjoying its moment in the sun. Life was like that, Harjeet realized, giving to everyone their moment of glory, and this was hers. The country was in turmoil again, and there were rumors of escalating hostilities between Britain and Germany, and sometimes it seemed to Harjeet as though the entire world was at war with itself. Closer home, Gautam was still pensive and Lalaji withdrawn. Her own future seemed humdrum and bleak. The relationship with Haider was permanently doomed to uncertainty, and the one with her husband was virtually non-existent. But at that moment, Lahore and her problems seemed so far away, and while waiting at the railway station in Simla for the train back to Kalka, basking in the warmth of a mellow sun and filled with the glow of achievement, Harjeet felt a deep sense of contentment. All these are lives, she mused, are written on the wind, our futures predetermined, and everything else just becomes an excuse. We go where the wind takes us, blowing a gale one day and caressing like a zephyr the next, at the mercy of runes that we cannot interpret. Stooping low against the storms that create havoc in our lives, we wait for a change in the wind, for a directional shift in the weather vane, for the gentle breeze of contentment on our backs. And ultimately our fortunes do change, and all the pieces of the puzzle come together to complete the picture. Maybe that was what Haider was, the missing piece that made her life whole. The future would look after itself. Right now she had her children and the man she loved with her. She could ask for no more from life. So, this explains why it is called Written on the Wind.
There was one more excerpt when we were having our conversation that you said that you would like to share, so.
So you mentioned that you liked the part when Amia is leaving Lahore and is sad at that. So I'll read about this. When at the time of partition, she had, the entire family had to move out of Lahore. And this, I can say, is finds resonance with what I saw in my family growing up. The loss of a homeland or the loss of where you come from stayed with my grandparents, I think, till the end. So I'll read this. My dada, who lived in Chandigarh, which is such a beautiful city, used to say, "Ye to kuch nahi hai, tumne Lahore nahi dekha," you know. So he still remembered that. So the inevitability of leaving Lahore smote Amia like a blow. Lahore, her city, the only place she had ever known. It had witnessed silently the drama of her life unfolding in its bosom never interfering, never judgmental. Its spring breezes, balmy and mild, had warmed her after a particularly harsh winter. Its summers had scorched her, but filled her days with the fragrance of the jasmine and the mogra. Mellow winter afternoons, spent half dozing in the sun, with a shawl covering her face, had an ambience of timelessness about them, as if the dappled shadows cast by the neem on the grass and the walls would endure forever. It had been kind to her, this jewel among cities, offering her another chance at happiness, generously allowing her to search for livelihood in its plenitude, giving her sanctuary in its leafy avenues. Sometimes it seemed to her that there was something in its air, an intangible glow, almost ethereal, that made it shimmer, like summer haze in the distance on a very hot day. Maybe it was magic dust, an Elysian benediction that made its buildings glimmer and its minarets shine, that gave to its bazaars their prosperity and to its residents the love of music and poetry. So that on a walk along one of its lanes and by-lanes, you were sure to hear some melody wafting from half-open windows. Her Lahore, with its crowded gullies and broad avenues, the Devi temple near Kamla's house, the cry of the milkman every morning, wood smoke rising on cold winter evenings, the half a kilometer walk to the Tonga stand and the swaying Tonga ride to the office of Noor, visiting Anarkali with Khurshid and coming home to excitedly open the shopping, samosas and jalebis from her favorite halwai at the corner of market, the kites of Basant and the chillums of the mystics, the gulmohar tree outside her window, which held every season captive in its canopy, balmy evenings at the Gymkhana Club, the quotidian hustle and bustle of the bazaars.
Beautiful, beautiful. And, just for my audience, notice how lovingly the novel not just brings out the love and the connection that human beings have between themselves in terms of relationships that we have with other people, but also the love for a place, the love for a nation, the love for, like your grandfather said, that tumne Lahore nahi dekha, the love for this beautiful culture that, that we'll probably just long for always. Before I move on to my last question and open it up to my audience, love is often also, filled with the anguish of waiting and longing, and one doesn't know whether that longing would see an end and there would be respite at the end of it. Between Amia and Harjeet, whose pain was most difficult for you to capture in terms of them getting a resolution for whatever problem it is that they are facing?
I think Amia having to give up her son for adoption, and husband had already left her, and this was the child that she had longed for and looked forward to, and wanted, and her sister-in-laws had taunted her. So having the courage to give him up for adoption, I think I wanted to capture that pain properly. I think that was it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a lot of students from my university who are attending here. I would now like to, along with other members, I would now like to open the house for questions. Let's hear from our youngsters and others. Do we have a volunteer? Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Aliza Khan, and my question is that apart from your family, what other literary inspirations did you have when you were writing this novel?
Basically, it was my family and the large extended family. But when I decided to write this, then I read up several other, I read up a lot of other things related to the partition. But I had heard so much about it really that what I read was just a repetition of what we had grown up with. So it was I think the family which, and Harjeet herself is modeled on one of my family members. So it is a fictionalized version of a true story.
Good evening, ma'am. I have this question. Like you and ma'am said, women love deeply, and everyone will agree with that. So what becomes a healing factor in navigating life and love, in your perspective? That's what I want to know. If you can just shed light.
You see, leaving aside the book, in a general way, I can tell you that healing can come from various sources. Healing can come from, like for Amya, for this Parsi lady who accepted her and loved her. Healing can come from a stranger who you meet and who turns to be empathetic. But if you ask me truly, I think healing only comes when you make peace with what is happening in your life, you see. Once Amya made peace that she had to give up her child, or that her husband was not going to come back. So that is when you start healing, when you accept it and you make peace with it. So that is what I would say.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, apart from partition, what are your views and learnings about this novel?
It's not only partition, it is, I think, learning to navigate life through difficult situations, Partition was a difficult situation for them, but basically the characters navigate life the best they can through difficult situations, and ultimately they find their peace in it. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, everyone. So now our speaker will ask one question from the audience, and whoever answers this question will receive a gift, which is a book called Living an Enriched Life by Dale Carnegie. So,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, so this is a question. Which poem by Rabindranath Tagore begins with the line, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high? Your options are The Banyan Tree, Heaven of Freedom, Gitanjali, The Child.
Oh, you are not allowed to say the answer.
So they've said.
You can raise your hand and
I
ma'am will
think
allow.
she said the answer, na? So they are right. They said it. She said it actually for everybody.
Okay, so can she come?
Of course,
Okay, you can come and receive your gift.
Please come.
I think that was an easy one.
As we conclude this insightful conversation, we are reminded of the profound ways in which love, ambition, and history shape our lives. Thank you so much, Anuradha Kumar Jain ji, for sharing your inspiring stories and enriching us with your perspective on romance, friendship, and societal change. And a heartfelt thanks to our moderator, Rolii Agrawal ji, for guiding this session so beautifully. As we bring profoundly enlightening session to a close, I would like to invite Dr. Meera Das ji, a valued member of our society, to come forward and offer commemorative memento to our distinguished speakers. This gesture serves as a heartfelt expression of our appreciation. This artwork has been masterfully created by Padma Shri Bhil artist Bhuri Bai for BLF 2025. It beautifully illustrates the interconnectedness of nature, earth, and humanity. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? I would once again like to thank our speaker and moderator. Thank you to the audience. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll be meeting in the next session. Thank you.